All right, everybody, continuing on now with the notes for Chapter 7, focusing on using audience data. Basically, this section we're going to talk about some of the different numbers and what those different numbers are going to represent. A rating is an estimate of the number of people or households viewing or listening to a particular program based on some universal estimate. And when we say universal estimate, that's basically going to be some sort of, if you think of a pie, what kind of pie are we talking about here? Usually when we're talking about ratings, we're talking about the population of the nation or of a particular television or radio market. So it might represent U.S. population. It might represent the population of people within the Raleigh television market or the Raleigh radio market. So whatever that estimate is relative to what you're talking about, the rating numbers are a percentage of that whole. You see the equation on your screen there. Basically, the rating would be the number of individuals for radio, the number of households for television that watch a particular show or listen to a particular program, and then you divide that by the population of the particular area that you are talking about. Meanwhile, share is different in that it's measuring the same number of people overall, but it's measuring it based on the actual number of viewers or listeners. So instead of looking at the entire population of the Raleigh market, for example, you're going to be measuring against the population of the Raleigh market that is actually watching television or is actually listening to the radio. So if 50% of the population is watching television during the particular time period that we're talking about, then instead of measuring the share number based on all of the people in Raleigh, we're only measuring against all of the people in Raleigh that were actually watching television. So you see that equation there on your screen. The formal name that we give for the actual number of people doing a certain thing would be households using television, HUT for short, or persons using radio, PUR. Ratings are smaller than corresponding shares because ratings consider the entire population, whether sets are on or off. Because again, we're just looking at the population as a whole. But shares take into account only the actual households or individuals using a particular medium. So, you could say, for example, that 10% of the population are fans of the Pittsburgh Steelers. That would mean 1 in 10 people in the United States were fans of that particular football team. But that would be the rating number. But if we were talking about shares, we would say that 20% of people that actually like football are fans of the Pittsburgh Steelers. So it's a smaller overall pool that we're talking about, to which we are basing our percentage value on. It's still only 10% of the entire population, but now we're talking about 20% of people that actually pay attention to football that would be fans of a particular team. So you can think about it in that particular way if it helps you. Some other terms to pay attention to. Average quarter-hour persons estimates the number of people listening to a radio station for at least 5 minutes within any given quarter hour. These quarter hours are fixed values. So, for example, you would be measuring for a time period between the top of the hour and 15 past the hour, or between 15 past the hour and 30 past the hour, and breaking up the clock like that throughout the broadcast hour. So if a person listens to a station for 5 minutes during any of those chunks of time, they're going to be considered part of that AQH number for that particular chunk of time. Average quarter-hour rating is the AQH persons expressed as a percentage of the total population instead of a hard, fast number. Average quarter-hour share is the AQH persons expressed as a percentage of the people actually listening to radio at the particular time. So kind of keep those things straight, whether we're talking about the population as a whole or the population that is actually utilizing a particular medium. That's the difference between a rating number and a share number. Cum persons represents a radio station's cumulative audience, or the estimated number of individuals reached by a radio station. So this is a number that is highly talked about when it comes to radio. What is your weekly cum? Basically, what we're talking about here is we're talking about the number of unique individuals that tune into a radio station for at least 5 consecutive minutes at any point during a given week. So if you tune into a certain radio station, you've listened for at least 5 minutes to that particular radio station, you are part of their cum persons statistic. A high number of cum persons indicates strong penetration or reach in a market, because that means that majority of the population has some sort of exposure to that station, which means they can count you as a particular member of the audience for that station, because you know who they are. You've listened for more than just a fleeting moment. So there's awareness there, and therefore they can count you as someone that knows of the station and is potentially a listener. Cum rating is an estimate of the station's reach, or the cum persons expressed as a percentage of the total population in a given week. And exclusive cum rating is an estimate of the percentage of the total population that listens to only one station over a period of time. Exclusive cum is a member of audience loyalty. There's a term that's used in the radio industry for people like that. We call them P1 listeners. Part of the reason that they're called P1 is that if a station is your favorite station or the only station that you listen to, more than likely that station's going to take the first preset on your car radio. So exclusive cum statistics are generally going to be from people that are these so-called P1 listeners. Some other terms: time spent listening. TSL estimates the amount of time the average person listens to radio. So once you dial into a station, how long do you stick around? There's a formula that figures that out. And turnover is an estimate of how many times the audience has changed completely during a particular time period. So this is the number of people that wind up leaving a station. If you've got high turnover numbers, that means you probably have low time spent listening numbers as well. These two values tend to be inversely related to each other. Market terminology. When we talk about a DMA, we're talking about a designated market area. This consists of those counties where the heaviest concentration of viewing or listening of stations in an area take place. And as far as those of us that live within CCCC service area, if you live in Harnett or Lee or Chatham counties, you are part of the Raleigh-Durham DMA. Metro is the geographical area corresponding to the U.S. Office of Management and Budget Standard Metropolitan Statistical Area. Big fancy way of saying it's basically the city that we're talking about and some of its immediately surrounding area. And there are clearly defined areas for that. You see examples of those on your screen. These don't necessarily line up with the radio and television markets that we tend to talk about in the business. But they do give us a bit of an idea as to where people generally flock to when it comes to their work life or where they spend their money and things like that. So it's still something that's rather valuable for TV and radio stations to know when it goes to marketing potential clients for advertising on the station, to know those sorts of things. This is a good place for us to take a break. We'll finish up the chapter with part C. Catch you over on that video.